Hi, welcome back to Jane's Stories of Life. Well, tell me, when you saw the words on the van, moving on up, tell me, did you start singing "Moving On Up to the East Side," the theme song from the old Jefferson's comedy during the 70s? When I lived in Cleveland, and even now, I don't know anyone who ever lived anywhere other than on the east side of Cleveland. Never knew a soul that lived on the west side. The only reason we went to the west side was because the airport was way over on the west side. Otherwise, east side was where everything was happening. Some people ask me, how is it that I think of these things, these various memories that I share? And I honestly can't tell you. I have trouble falling asleep at night, and that's when my mind is most active. For some reason the other night, I thought about how many times I have moved. I've moved a great number of times, especially when you consider my family had nothing to do with the military. We had nothing to do with corporate America and jobs moving us from place to place, but instead it was just a matter of circumstance. As you may know, my dad died when I was 6 years old, so it was my mom and I for many years. The year after he died, shortly after he died, we moved from the house we had been living in into just a small apartment. I think it was on the third floor of a two-family house. We were there for a year, and then we moved to Des Moines, Iowa, which was 90 miles away from Mom's family in Iowa. We moved twice in Iowa, and then we moved back to Cleveland. When we moved back to Cleveland, my mom never knew she never learned how to drive, and so everything we did had to be convenient for bus stops and public transportation. We moved each time to a better place for one reason or another, either size, location, convenience, whatever it was. Between the time I was in kindergarten and high school, we moved 10 times. A nice variety of things. Sometimes it was an apartment in part of a two-family house. One of the most interesting features in one of the efficiency apartments that we lived in for, I think, a year, maybe 2 years, was that it had a Murphy bed. That was the bed that was in the wall that you had to pull out each night and then put back in the wall. That was an interesting experience. Some of the other interesting places that we lived, let me think. I don't know if there were any. That was probably the most interesting, but that was just something that we lived. We found better places. We packed up and moved on. From the time I finished college, and now I've moved another 10 times. Morgan and I, when we got married, I moved to Detroit and then back to Cleveland after I met Morgan in Cleveland. We lived in Cleveland for a year after we married, and then we moved to upstate New York for 21 years. Our first house was a cute little house, only we learned right then, you don't buy a house because it's cute. It was a cute little 2-bedroom house, which we outgrew within 4 years. And then our larger home that we bought, we were in for the rest of the time. We were in Schenectady. Then when we left there, we moved to Dover, which was Morgan's home. We were there for 29 years and had 2 different places that we lived in, a house, and then eventually we were able to move into what was Morgan's family home and rehab it and add on to it where we lived until we moved here to Kissimmee. So moving was just a part of my life. The boxes, the packing, you went to the liquor store. Those are the best boxes. The liquor store boxes were nice and strong. You could pack a lot into those. Uh, Moving was always exciting. I don't remember, except for the last move, when we moved here to Florida. It was a very stressful time. Morgan had been in and out of the hospital, in and out of rehabs. We moved because his health was worrisome, and we moved so we would be closer to John, who lives here in Florida as well. That was a very stressful move, and just getting the necessary medical releases, and things were delayed. But otherwise, moving, other than packing and the frustration of making all those details, otherwise moving was pretty exciting. There were losses each time. Somehow you've managed to misplace something or not move something, and there are things that you say, oh wow, something happened to that in one of the moves. But you know what? That was just a part of it. I don't wish to move again, I can tell you that. That packing, I still have a couple of boxes. I've been here 6 years. I have pictures that I have not hung. I have a few things in boxes that they say if you haven't used it, they're probably things that I don't need, because if I haven't unpacked them, guess what? In 6 years, I haven't needed them. They're still in the boxes. I need to do something with those one of these days. But as I say, the topic of moving, for some reason, just popped into my head, and it's been an interesting life with the move. Several times, one time when we were in Iowa, the last few months, my mom and I just were in a room we rented a room in a woman's house because we were going to be moving back to Cleveland. Those transitions, when I was going to move from Cleveland to Detroit, I didn't need an apartment for just 5 or 6 months when I made that decision. So I rented a room, and I stayed in with a family that I knew well, and paid some money toward the family expenses. When I was moving from Detroit back to Cleveland, once again, I knew within 4 months that's what I was going to be doing. And so I stayed with a friend of my mom's in her house, and simply contributed to her household expenses by just staying in one of the rooms, so one of her bedrooms. So, my experiences have been varied. I just have a lot of memories, as you know. Moving was definitely one of them. So, cherish your memories and pass them on. Have you moved? Let me ask that question. Many of you have moved, some have not. I read something once, and it kind of stuck with me, about being willing to move. And the quote was, if you're not willing to move, you're not willing to grow. Well, I don't know that it's really quite that harsh, but moving certainly does provide you with a whole realm of new experiences. And so if you are of the age and interest in moving, consider it. Morgan was 80 when we moved here, and I was 76. We moved to a location we knew nothing about. John said, move to Central Florida because the expenses are not as high and the weather's a little bit different. And so this is where we came. And it happens that we did know several people here, which was great. But at the time, it was just the adventures of the littles. You know us. We were never afraid to step out on faith and have new adventures. So cherish your memories, pass them on, and happy whatever you do. All right, have a good one.